Okay, this is Decimals Revision Video 5. This is the final video. Now, rounding decimals to a given number of decimal places. Now, the rule is to round off a number correct to a given number of decimal places, you need to look at the digit immediately to the right of the specified place. What I mean by that is, if I want to round this first number 80.635 to one decimal place, I'm going to highlight my first decimal place, which is the 6. Remember, decimal places are the decimal part of a number starts after the point. So that 6 is the first decimal place, the 3 is the second decimal place, and the 5 is the third decimal place. So if I want to round this to one decimal place, I've highlighted my first decimal place and I have to decide, does this 6 stay as a 6 or does it go up to a 7? So to decide that, I look at the next number to the right, or I look at the second decimal place, which is a 3, and if that number is a 0, 1, 2, 3 or 4, in other words, if that number next to the 6 is less than 5, then I keep my 6, I round it down, but when you round down you actually don't go down, you just keep it as 80.6. So because this 3 here is less than 5, the 6 stays as a 6. So this number rounded to one decimal place is 80.6. Now with the second question, we have to round off 68.1378 to 3 decimal places. Well, what I want to do first is that I need to find my third decimal place. So my decimal places start after the decimal point. So 1, 2, that's my third decimal place. So the 7 is my third decimal place. So I have to decide, do I keep that 7 the same or does it go up to an 8? Well, I look at the number next to the 7. And it's an 8. Now that 8 is 5 or bigger. So if the digit next to that 7 is a 5 or bigger, if it's in other words 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9, then this 7 has to change to an 8. So my answer here will be 68.138. Okay, that's that question. Now looking at the next question. Round off 549.855 to 2 decimal places. First we need to find that second decimal place, and that second decimal place is this highlighted 5. So I need to decide, does that 5 stay as a 5 or does it go up to a 6? So I need to look at what's next to the 5, and what's next to the 5 is another 5, and if this number next to that yellow 5 is a 5 or greater, then that 5 needs to be rounded up to a 6. So my answer will be 549.86. Okay, now you can also be asked to round something to the nearest hundredth. Now, in other words, you know your decimal place values now. So 84 is the whole number part, and the first 9 is in the tenths place, and the second 9 is in the hundredths place. So I have to decide on whether that 9 will stay as a 9 or whether it goes up. Now, I need to look at what's next to that 9, and it's another 9. So yes, that 9 will go up. So my 84.99 needs to go up. The problem is the next number after 9 is 10, and I can't really put a 10 there. So if you were counting and you were saying 84.99, well, there's nowhere else to go except for 85. And because we need 2 decimal places, because rounding to the nearest hundredth is like rounding to 2 decimal places, because we're rounding it to not the tenths but the hundredths column, which is the second decimal place. So my answer also needs to have 2 decimal places. So my answer will be 85.00. Now you can also be asked to round off numbers to the nearest whole number. So I have to decide, if I just want to round that to the nearest whole number, I only want a whole number part in my answer. I don't want a decimal point, and I definitely don't want anything after the decimal point. So I need a whole number. So the last bit of my whole numbers here is the 3. So is this, what we're trying to say, is 123.59, is it closer to 123 or 124? So to decide that, we've got to decide, does this 3 stay the same or does it go up to a 4? So what we do, we look at the next number after the 3, and that's a 5, because 5 is what we call the halfway mark. And remember, if the number after the one that you've highlighted is 5 or more, we have to round up that highlighted number up to the next number. So your answer will be 124. Okay, you can pause the video and attempt the next column. Restart the video when you're done. Okay, in the first question, you've been asked to round to 1 decimal place. So remember to highlight the first decimal place and then look at the number after that first decimal place. So we've got to decide, does this 2 stay the same? Well, let's look at what's after it, and it's a 1. So that 1 is less than 5, so the answer, the 2 will stay the same, and the answer will be 6.2. In the next question, you're rounding off 132.4699 to 3 decimal places. So you have to decide, let's count the third decimal place, 4, 6, 9. This first 9 here is the third decimal place. So you have to decide, does that 9 stay as a 9 or does it go up? Well, you look at the 9, you look at the number next to the 9 and it's another 9, which means that this 9 has to go up. But the problem is you can't really add 10 there. So what we do, we just read what we've got. We've got, after the decimal point, we've got 469. So the next number after 469 would be 470. So we write our whole number part as 132, and then we change the decimal part to 470 because this 9 needs to go up to a 10. So the 69 will become the next number up, which is 70. Now in the next question, we have to round 15.8755 to 2 decimal places. Remember, highlight that second decimal place, and you've got to decide, does that step 7 stay the same or does it go up to an 8? Well, you need to look at what's after the 7, which is a 5, and if that number next to the 7 is 5 or more, then that 7 has to go up to an 8. So it becomes 15.88. Okay, in this next question, you have to round off to the nearest cent. Well, when we're talking about cents, like we might say I've got $25.72 or $25.75 or something like that. So cents always have 2 decimal places. So I have to decide, I have to look at that second decimal place. It'll be $25.70 something. So I have to decide, does this highlighted 6 stay as a 6 or does it go up to a 7? So my answer is going to be $25.70. Is it going to be 76 or 77? Well, we have to decide about this 6. Let's look at what's next to that highlighted 6, and it's another 6. Now that 6 is 5 or more, so I've got $25.70, and this 6 changes to a 7. So I've got $25.77. Now in the next question, you have to round that number off to the nearest dollar, or that money amount off to the nearest dollar, and you've got $52.38. So you have to decide, is that closer to $52 or $53? So because we want it to the nearest dollar, remember dollars, if you're counting dollars, they're whole numbers. So we don't want any decimals in our answer. So we say, right, I've got to decide, does that 2 stay the same or does it go up to the next number, which is a 3? Well, let's look at what's next to the 2, and it's a 3. So that 3 is less than 5, so our answer stays as $52 to the nearest dollar. Okay, you can now go to your textbook and I'll let you know which exercise you need to do. Okay, the exercise is exercise 4H, and you can start by doing question 1 would be a good one to start with. You can also do questions 4, 5 and 8 and 9. Now, you do not need to do each question in each of those questions. You might just decide to do the first row or the second row of each question. So you, like I said, question 1, question 4, 5, and questions 8 and 9, but maybe just do one row of each of those, or 2 if you've got the time. Okay, we're going back to the booklet for our last section. Now, our last section is writing or notation for recurring or repeating decimals. There is actually a shorthand way of writing that decimal. Notice we've got 0.33333 and it just goes on forever. And we know that it goes on forever because we've got these little dots here. So a quick way of writing that would be to write 0.3 with a dot on the 3. Okay, now in the next question, we've got 0.27272727 ... which means it continues on forever and ever. Now we notice we've got 2 repeating digits here. So to show that it's repeating, we have to put a dot on top of the 2 and the 7. So we write 0.27 and they both have dots on them. Now, in the next question, we've got 1.345, 345, 345. So girls, the 1 is not repeating. So the whole number part doesn't repeat, but the decimal part afterwards does. So we write this as 1.345. Now, there's a dot on top of the 3 and the dot on top of the 5. When you've got, say, 3 repeating digits, you actually don't have to put a dot on the 3 and the 4 and the 5. You just have to put a dot on the first of the repeating digits and the last one. Okay, so as it says here, if there are more than 2 repeating digits, just place a dot over the first and the last repeating digit. So this does mean that the 3, 4, 5 repeats over and over again. Now with the next question, we've got 0.8, 35, 35, 35, 35. So the actual 8 does not repeat, but just the 3, 5 repeats. So we write that as 0.8 with no dots, but then the dots go over the 3, 5. And it goes over both of them because this means 0.8, 35, 35, 35, 35, etc. Okay, try those last 4 questions in that last column. Okay, hopefully you've completed those, and let's just check our answers. The answer to the first one, we've only got 1 repeating digit, which is the 7, so it's 0.7 with a dot. In the next question, we've got 4 point in the whole number part, and the 35, 35, 35 repeats. So the 3 and the 5 both have dots on top of them. With the next question, the 4 doesn't repeat, but the 6, 7, 6, 7 repeats. So the 4 doesn't have a dot, but the 6 7s do, and you have to write it as 0.4 with the 6 and the 7 with the dots on them. And in the last question, just have to be careful with this one, the 0.32, there's no repeating there, but the repeating starts after that with the 798, 798, etc. So it's 0.32 with no repeats. And then we've got a dot over the 7 and a dot over the 8. Remember, we don't need a dot over the 9 because a dot over the 7 and the 8 means that the 798 repeats. Okay, 798, 798. Okay, we can now go back to the textbook and complete some questions. And to practice this last skill, which is recurring decimals, you're going to go to page 178 of your textbook, exercise 4I, and I would like you to do all of question 3 from A through to F. Okay, that's it for our revision videos. That was just the end of the revision videos for decimals. You also need to look at and go through the revision videos for percentages and also the revision videos for fractions. Okay, thank you.